mean, it does, in one way, it looks like you're explaining something. In the other way, it looks like you're saying, wait, don't take a picture of me yet. You know? Okay, we'll just go with it. I thought it was good. We'll get there.
I mean, throw up a lot here.
It could be worse.
How's it figure out?
Oh, it is good to stand near one another, to look at one another, to be in this place. I woke up remembering one of the first people to inspire me in Unitarian Universalism, the Reverend Dr. William Schultz. You might remember him as the president of our association. He was the executive director of Amnesty International UUA, of USA, Marvin Cunis. He's also served as president of the UU Service Committee. So I thought we'd come together with his words today. Come, he says, come into this place of peace, and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory, and let its history form your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power, and let its vision change your heart. For all of you, for all of us, supporting the work of this congregation here on the cusp of worship today, may you have everything that you need. Reverend Bethany and Celeste preaching and serving as worship associates, all of you tech team, without you, this would not be possible. May you have everything that you need. And may you take from this service just a little bit more. Take it with you out into your homes and out into the world. Gratitude.
Yeah, because, you know, I could potentially bring 5, but, you know, what if you can't make it?
Yeah, yeah. And it happens sooner or later, and we should have one that's just here that's connected all the time. But once we have our permanent table, maybe.
I'm lighting the chalice, but you're extinguishing it. Yeah, perfect. Okay.
And in the concept, we're basically, we don't necessarily need this, although we probably do.
Yeah, it's a nice check.
It's also kind of nice for something to be separate. You know, that person can read out the photo. So, did you get the listener name on that person?
Doing your role there. Yeah, I'll be doing everything from there. When we both speak, we'll be at the tune. That's the only time. Oh, please.
Somebody said, well, you know, we could go into the Zoom chat if you want a more personal and social interaction. Like, it really was wonderful. They were like, and what about the Twin Towers? Man, I'll tell you, I think that was, you know, done by so-and-so. You know what makes me so mad is when, you know, this and that, and it was just like venting all their political anger, and I'm relevant to what's happening. So I meet them, I put in a timeout for like 3 minutes, and then as soon as the timeout ran out, they came back up. Hey, why am I muted? Why did you do that for a minute? And I was like, okay, not my way.
This is what's streaming out. You switch it to the iPad.
Oh, okay, I was about to go, okay, I'm not in the YouTube channel.
We are running right now.
Yes, and so I'm just gonna go and make sure that the audio is good.
Welcome to your friendly Sunday morning audio test. All right, one more time, let's try that. Okay. Yay, it works everywhere.
Okay, it's official. Yes, from all our phones and mobile phones. The voice heard down the world, yes. It was still had the root cause something that was served up to the stroke. Yeah. $150. Oh, no, did I see it? It's gotta be like, yeah.
Good morning, and welcome to the service at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. As many of you know, my name is Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, and I have the great pleasure of serving as your minister. Our community is as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert. Whoever you are, whoever you have been, and whoever you are becoming, I invite you to bring your whole self here and now. I extend a special welcome to anybody visiting with us for the first, second, or third time, or those of you who still feel new. I invite you to fill out a guest card if you haven't already, which Mary Weiss will post in the YouTube chat now. And everyone is welcome to gather on Zoom for social hour soon after the service ends. There will be a link in the YouTube chat later for that. There are about 10 of us here in Holland Sanctuary this morning, although you will only see a couple of us, myself and Celeste Rogers, here live on video. My little baby Otis is also here with our child care provider, Sarah Nichols. We have Reverend Carolyn Price with us, the chaplain in this space this morning. And we also have a fabulous tech crew who you can see now, if not soon. We have Cassandra Klein, Larry Newhouse, Liz Ravenwood here for the first time, and Cynthia Johnson. And our custodian, Jesus Carrillo, is somewhere on campus making sure everything goes okay this morning. Most of our worship leaders this morning, again, have chosen to submit pre-recorded videos. They made this choice because they personally cannot take the risk of being here physically, and/or because they have made the decision to not expose us, people here, to their risk level. We are trying to model, as before, and experiment with how we balance inclusion and flexibility as we move towards multi-platform congregational life. And just an update on where our COVID policies for gatherings stand. Other than this gathering, indoor, in-person meetings are still not permitted on our campus. They will be allowed once Pima County has been at a high risk level or lower on covidactnow.org for 7 continuous days or 1 full week. As of this morning, Pima County is still on very high and has been there for a few days. So outdoor gatherings are the only things that are permitted currently. We'll let you know as that changes, and we'll try to communicate better about that so you're always in the loop. Welcome again. We are so glad that you are here.
These words for our call to worship come from the Religious Institute. They are called Our Common Life Enriched. We are grateful for the gift of our lives and the gift of other people in our lives.
Each of us is created with dignity and worth.
We are called to love one another and to do nothing to others that we would find hateful to ourselves.
We honor the many ways that people live and love.
Our common life is enriched when queer, transgender, bisexual, lesbian, and gay people can come out sharing the gifts of their sexual orientation and gender identity.
True justice flourishes when all people can live and flourish.
We suffer when LGBTQ people are oppressed, excluded, or shamed by religious people who overlook the fundamental call to love one another.
Love does not exclude. We are all worthy.
May we work to build a world where all people are celebrated and loved.
We celebrate sexual and gender diversity as a blessing that enriches us all.
Please join me now in saying our words for our chalice lighting, as Reverend Bethany lights our chalice here in Holland. If you have a chalice or candle at home, now is the time to light it. These words come from Reverend Katie Romano Griffin. She writes, "May the flame of this chalice, the symbol of our faith, connect us to all who have come before us, all who are with us in body and spirit, and all who are yet to come into being. May it serve as a reminder of our unity and connection across all time and space."
We have cleared off the table, leftovers saved, washed the dishes and put them away. I have told you a story and tucked you in tight at the end of your knockabout day.
As the moon sets its sail to carry you to sleep over the midnight sea, well, I will sing you a song no one sang to me. May it keep you good company. You can be anybody that you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country that your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends around. You can choose one special one. And the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're gone.
Some girls grow up strong and bold.
Some boys are quiet and kind.
Some race on ahead, some follow behind.
Some grow in their own space and time.
Some women love women.
Some men love men, some raise children, and some never do. You can dream of a day never reaching, of everything possible for you.
Don't be rattled by names, by taunts or games, but seek out spirits true. If you give your friends the best part of yourself, they will give the same back to you.
You can be anybody that you want to be. You can love whoever you will. You can travel any country where your heart bleeds, and know I will love you still. You can live for yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're gone. Oh, the love you leave behind when you're
Hey, Amira, look at this book that just came in today. Can I read it with you? Okay, cool. It's called 47,000 Beads.
Ooh.
Written by Okoja and Angel Adejo. Now, there's going to be some words in here that I can't pronounce because they're in Lakota, which is the name of the tribe that this book is about, the people in this book. So I'm going to do my best. And if you know how to pronounce them better, go ahead and let me know so that I can learn. 47,000 beads. This is Peyton. What do you think she's feeling?
Sad.
That's what I think so too, but I don't know why. Let's find out. Peyton's auntie, Ayota, came to her room. Time for bed, but before sleep, tell me, why do you not dance powwow with us, little one? Do you know what a powwow is?
No.
It's a gathering of Native American peoples, and they dance and they sing and they have a big party and lots of food. It's a religious, spiritual celebration ceremony.
Cool.
So Auntie says, why do you not dance powwow with us, little one? Peyton shrugged and flopped down on her bed. Come now, said her auntie, tell me. All in a rush, Peyton said, I don't want to jingle dance, Auntie. I don't want to wear a dress. Peyton, there are a great many dances, said Auntie gently. There are many regalias. Peyton started to cry. Finally, she said, there's just none for kids like me. Auntie smiled at Peyton and started undoing her braid. I think I am beginning to understand. You sleep now. Tomorrow is a new day, and I know someone who can help. In the morning, Auntie Ayota baked bread and went to see a friend. She found Elle working and said, oh, how is it today, grandparent? Elle put down their tools and answered, it is a good day. What way can I help you today, Ayota? Auntie Ayota gave Elle the bread she'd baked, and they sat down together in a shady spot. When they were settled, Auntie explained that she wanted to talk about her niece, Peyton. Elle asked, Peyton is the small, quiet one. Oh, yes, that's the one, said Auntie Ayota. You've noticed her. I've noticed I always see her keeping time with her feet, but she doesn't dance. She looks at the dancers like she wants badly to dance, like in her heart she is dancing. She is a shy child, asked Elle. Peyton is special, grandparent, different. I think her path is two-spirit. I think she wants regalia like her brother and uncle. She feels alone, but I know she isn't. I want to show her that she's not. How does she feel when she's in the jingle dress?
Well, said Elle, I'm happy to share teachings with her and to guide her while she learns which path is hers to walk. But I think you need more than that, yeah? Ayota laughed. You saw that too. I was hoping you'd help me with getting regalia together for her, the kind she really wants. I know it's a lot to ask. It's a big job, yeah, but that's why we have a community. Let me ask around. Are you still beating too, Ayota? Let's draw it up. On the way home, Ayota called her sister Chapa, Peyton's other auntie, and asked if she'd make Peyton's new beaded belt and headband. Maybe use lots of orange. It's her favorite color. Then she sat down with Peyton's mom, Mika, to explain. They spoke late into the night. Her mom asked, should I be worried? Ayota said, no, sister. You should make her a ribbon shirt and pants to match. You'll see. She'll finally get out in the arena where she's meant to be. Who else should she ask? Auntie sent an email to the grandmother who first taught her how to bead. Winona was still making regalia and said she would be glad to help, even if she needed a magnifying glass to see all the tiny beads on Peyton's harness and aprons. Auntie Ayota called her cousin all the way in Montana. He was so excited to make a set of beautiful armbands and cuffs for Peyton's new regalia. He sent them with a blessing to sing at the powwow for her and with a hug for Peyton. Last, but maybe most importantly, Elle offered to make Peyton's moccasins. Moccasins are shoes. They had turtles on the toes to give endurance for the dance and to make Peyton's feet feel grounded to the earth. I think Peyton still doesn't know what the adults are doing yet. I think she still feels in distress. Peyton was in her room getting ready for the giveaway and potluck. It was one of her favorite and best parts of the powwow. Her aunties and mama would drum and sing, and there would be as much of all her favorite foods as she could eat. Sounds like a cool party. Mm-hmm. What should I give away? Peyton thought. Grandmother says it's always something you value that you give first. Wait, I've got it. What would you give? Something you value that you would give away first.
One stuffy.
One stuffy.
Yeah,
what would
I
you
have
give?
A lot.
Something valuable and important to you. Peyton got down the abalone shell she'd put up on the shelf. She held it and remembered how happy she'd been to get it and how it had made her smile all year when she looked at it. Perfect. When they got to the potluck, Auntie Ayota said, Peyton, I have a special giveaway for you this time. You have heard how when I was a girl, how I wanted to drum, but all the drummers were men where I lived. Now, you know I am head singer on our drum here. My family believed in me and honored me, and today I am grateful to do the same for you. Our whole family wants to give you this gift, but the person to give it is your new teacher, Auntie Ayota said, taking Elle by the hand. This grandparent will give you stories and help you find your path. Hello, said Elle, greeting Peyton. I have such stories to tell you about people from all the nation who carry two spirits inside of them. I can't wait to tell them to you. Peyton, your community stand behind me to give you this gift, and may you dance strong in it tomorrow, Elle said. Peyton unwrapped each package and heard who made it and given it to her, with her mother and Auntie Ayota sitting beside her. The next day at the powwow in the arena with her auntie drumming an honor song, Peyton was finally dancing. Dancing as herself, not as a boy or as a girl, but as Peyton and her 47,000 beads.
The end.
The end. There's a little more information in the back of this book about what a giveaway is. A giveaway ceremony is one of many customs still practiced today. It is performed at spiritual and social gatherings such as a powwow. Visitors are honored with gifts. It's important to our people to be generous. And they also say what a two-spirit person is. This is a newer English word used as a rough translation for older words in the languages of many tribes and nations. Two-spirit describes someone whom non-Indigenous people might call gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, and gender-independent or non-binary. The word two-spirit only describes Native, Indigenous, First Nations people and should not be used for other people. It was a very important distinction to make. What a beautiful book of how Peyton comes to be accepted by their community.
And she danced it like herself, not like anybody else.
Just like each of us is unique. Thank you for sharing the story with me. And thank you.
What a beautiful story. Our earth is strong. It can hold our pain and our joy, our love and our anger. Our shared bowl, which we use for joys and concerns each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings, and also the smaller stones that will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. I myself am holding in my heart neighbors and friends who are dealing with loss and illness. We who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. Let us remember those desert people who came first in this place. We honor the Hohokam, the Yavapai, the Tohono O'odham, the Yaqui, and the people who no longer exist as tribal entities here in Arizona. Let us remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. We pour water from a plastic jug, similar to the ones used by those seeking to assure greater access to water in the desert, like our ministry partner, No More Deaths. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to type it into the chat or speak it out loud wherever you are. As you do that, Reverend Bethany will place pebbles into the water to symbolize the joys and sorrows within our community. The pebbles create ripples of hope, even now as we are far apart.
The poet William Blake says that joy and sorrow are woven fine. And that is true, lifting up some of the joys and sorrows and concerns from our chat this morning. Sending prayers of traveling mercies and safety for Sam's family, brother and father traveling to see ailing family this week. And holding Mark A. in sorrow, hoping for courage and healing to come to them. And tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day. So these words of prayer come from Mike Adams, a Unitarian Universalist layperson currently living in New Mexico, who is Lilwat Indian from British Columbia, Canada, the land known as British Columbia now. The writer's mother was violently separated from her family and tribe through the Indian adoption program when she was a child. And the author of this prayer is now part of a process of reclaiming his Lilwat Indian culture and reconnecting with his family. Hear Mike Adams' words now. For the generations who survived being hunted, who endured the theft and destruction of our people's lands, and who persevered through the theft of and indoctrination of our children, we are grateful that you survived and for the resilience you have passed on to us. Because you did these things, we are still here. For the activists who stood against corruption and who forced a spotlight onto our people's mistreatment, we are grateful for your commitment. Because of it, we are still here. For the people who never consented to the sacrifices that were forced from you, we remember you. We mourn your suffering and loss. We honor you as best we can. We do this because we are still here. For the future generations, we ask that you remember. We look to you and keep our people's future alive after we're gone. We ask you to find strength in your ancestors and use the resilience of your people to create your future and that of your children. We ask you to ensure that when we are gone, through you, we are still here. Amen, and may it be so.
Make us all where we are sanctuary, whole and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, we are living sanctuary for you. Make us so where we are sanctuary, whole and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, we are living sanctuary for you. Make us all where we are sanctuary, whole and holy, tried and true.
These words for the offering come from the Reverend Linda Bunyard. With gratitude for the abundance in our own lives, we give for the life of this congregation. The life of our congregation has continued throughout this pandemic. Even when we are not meeting in person, our congregation depends on your financial support. To support our congregation, you can send a check to the office, give online at uuctucson.org/donate, or text 833-361-5796.
This reading comes from Reverend Patrick O'Neill. It's titled, "And How Are the Children?" Among the most accomplished and fabled tribes of Africa, no tribe was considered to have warriors more fearsome or more intelligent than the mighty Maasai. It is perhaps surprising then to learn the traditional greeting that passed between Maasai warriors. Kasarian Injira. One would always say to another, it means, "And how are the children?" It is still the traditional greeting among the Maasai, acknowledging the high value that the Maasai always place on their children's well-being. Even warriors with no children of their own would always give the traditional answer, "All the children are well," meaning, of course, that peace and safety prevail, that the priorities of protecting the young, the powerless, are in place. That Maasai society has not forgotten its reason for being, its proper functions and responsibilities. All the children are well means that life is good. It means that the daily struggles for existence do not preclude proper caring for their young. The writer writes, "I wonder how it might affect our consciousness of our own children's welfare if in our culture we took to greeting each other with this daily question, 'And how are the children?' I wonder if we heard that question and passed it along to each other a few dozen times a day, if it would begin to make a difference in the reality of how children are thought of or cared for in our own country. I wonder if every adult among us, parent and non-parent alike, felt an equal weight for the daily care and protection of all the children in our community, in our town, in our state, in our country. I wonder if we could truly say without any hesitation, the children are well. Yes, the children, all the children are well." What would it be like if the minister began every worship service by answering the question, and how are the children? If every town leader had to answer the question at the beginning of every meeting, and how are the children? Are they all well? Wouldn't it be interesting to hear the answers? What would it be like? I wonder. That ends the reading. This past spring, I was washing dishes early one morning and looked out my front window just in time to see a school bus drive down my street. And I burst into tears because it was the first time in 18 months that I had seen a school bus drive down my street. I burst into tears of fear and of joy, because I knew that that bus would be carrying children into a COVID-19 incubator of a school. And I also knew that the social connection from in-person school would save some children's lives, not an exaggeration. So, how are the children? Today, over 18 months into a pandemic that brought with it social isolation and disruption of routines that are so important to them, how are the children? Those who are still schooling at home, those who are risking exposure every day at school, how are they? And how are their parents, guardians? Just before this year's coming out day tomorrow, how are the queer children? The LGBTQ, trans, non-binary children, the children whose identities we do not yet have words for. And just before this Indigenous Peoples Day tomorrow, also, how are the Indigenous children? The Indigenous girls and Two-Spirit children who have gone missing or been murdered. The children still feeling the impact of centuries of forced family separation on their own families today. Those children who are asking to learn their ancestral languages and reviving it in their communities through their learning. How are all the children? To start, not okay. Because of the pandemic, children have, like many of us, had less access to safe health care. CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program, reported recently that over the last 18 months, there's been a 40% drop in wellness visits, a 44% drop in outpatient mental health services for children, and a 75% drop in dental services for children in our country. And again, here in the United States, it was reported that at least 120,000 children have been orphaned because they lost their parent or parents due to COVID-19. Over half of these orphans are Black and brown children. And while the social distancing and other stress of the pandemic have impacted all of the children, the pandemic has only worsened the gap between those with access to education, good, well-financed access, and those without that access. Yet more reminders of how this pandemic has disproportionately impacted communities, children of color. I talked with teachers and parents in our community this week, and they report seeing a dramatic increase in emotional dysregulation among the children, theirs and those other children in their lives. For many children who have just returned to school, only now is it becoming clear just how bad their mental health had become. UNICEF, which did a worldwide report, reports that over the globe, 20% of children that they talked to reported feeling depressed or having little interest in things. 20%. I've personally heard both stories of struggle and resilience amongst the children. In multiple conversations with colleagues across the country, they have noted, separate from one another, a rise in depression and suicidality amongst their youth, their teenagers, especially queer youth. And yet, I've also heard of children who were so excited to go to school in person that they were the ones waking their parents up on school mornings. They were the ones getting breakfast ready. How are the children? Many of them are not okay. And they've survived. Many of them, just like you and just like us. Because if you heard in Reverend O'Neill's words, that question, and how are the children, is not just about how the children are, it's about understanding that the whole community's health is reflected in the social, emotional, physical health of the young. At the beginning of this pandemic, our focus was rightly as a society focused on the most vulnerable to severe disease and death if they caught COVID. So those over 65, those who are immunocompromised, the healthcare workers and essential personnel who were exposing themselves every day. And then the vaccinations came and they focus on those vulnerable populations softened, but it never really shifted to those who are now more vulnerable. We never refocused as a country, as a community, who are now most vulnerable without access to vaccinations yet. Those children, mostly, especially those attending in-person school, daycare. It is true, the risk of death is lower for children still, thank goodness. And many children these past 18 months have been socially isolated, just like you, just like me, just like us, for a significant portion of their young lives. Which is not to mention the adults whose parenting, whose guardianship has been stretched as they worked from home, as they quit their jobs, as they parented with fewer safe childcare options and a lot of bad options to choose from every single day. Even though it's not being reported, again, some of the teachers in our community reported to me that entire classrooms, halves of schools across local school districts, TUSD and Vail, are being regularly shut down due to COVID exposure. Again, creating more and more disruption in an already unstable situation. And our focus as a society, as a community, never really refocused there, to the children, to the families. Maybe because we were a year into social disconnection, maybe because our society has few places that intentionally build non-familial, multi-generational community. With one notable exception though, right? Congregations just like ours. Churches, congregations like ours are one of the remaining places where we can form non-familial, multi-generational relationships. This is one reason I became a minister, because you see, as a child, being seen by an adult who wasn't in my family, who wasn't a teacher, made a big impact in me. I learned this firsthand growing up in church. I started working in churches when I was just 22 years old, if you can believe it. And in my first job, I shared an office with another minister in formation who had also grown up in the church I grew up in, but just one generation, at least a generation before me. And one Sunday morning in worship at that job, I shared a story about remembering walking or often running into the doors of my church on a Sunday morning. And the one particular member was always there to greet me. Bethany, it is so good to see you. Welcome. They knew my name. Another adult who wasn't my parent, wasn't my teacher, wasn't my family, saw me, knew me, cared about me. And Tony, this fellow minister in formation who I shared an office with, later told me that when he walked or ran into those same doors 40 years earlier, that same person greeted them every Sunday. Tony, it is so good to see you. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. At its best, at our best, Unitarian Universalist congregations are places where you know, without a doubt, that you belong. This extends to our children too, although we don't always remember to focus there. And belong not just in the sense that you're welcome, but belong like in 47,000 Beads that Jamili and Amira read to us earlier. In that story, Peyton is not just welcomed in her two-spiritedness. She is encouraged, mentored into that identity by her auntie Ayota, her mentor Elle, and many others in her community. Peyton doesn't have to ask for acceptance. Auntie Ayota and Elle and the rest of their family see Peyton. They really see Peyton in her anguish, and they create space for her to flourish and grow and embrace her identity. At our best, this is the kind of space we can be at church, where we see the children, we see them for their gifts and their struggles, and we offer them space to become their full selves. And not just because our children deserve that, but because we all deserve that. If we take the health of our children seriously, we will take the health of our adults seriously too. If we take the health of our children seriously, we can build a better world. In preparing for a different sermon, which I thought was going to be preached today, but it didn't come out, not ready to be birthed yet, I listened to a podcast called All My Relations, which is hosted by two Indigenous women, and it focuses on Indigenous and Alaskan Native experiences and wisdom. It would be a good thing to listen to dive into tomorrow on Indigenous Peoples Day if you're looking for a way to hear from Indigenous folks. And because the podcast is called All My Relations, they always ask their guests to start by saying what that podcast title means to them. And a recent guest, Abigail Echo Hawk, who is an Indigenous Pawnee storyteller and public health researcher, currently living in what is now known as the Pacific Northwest. And she answers this question this way. She told a story about traveling from the Pacific Northwest to Nebraska for her public health research. And she was there to study the impacts of missing and murdered Indigenous women and two-spirited people on the Indigenous populations there. After a work-related meeting, an Indigenous person currently living in what is now known as Nebraska said, "I know that this is your ancestors' lands. The Pawnee were forcibly removed from what we now know as Nebraska." This person said to her, "I know the Pawnee are from here, this land. And so the work that you are doing now," she said, "for us is about those ancestors and the children to come." Abigail Echo Hawk said that this moment led her to sob in her office because she felt so seen. And she realized that this experience reminded her of her responsibility and accountability as an Indigenous person. In her own words, she said it this way: "Indigenous people are not people who see ourselves as individual people, but as part of a community. I am blessed," she said, "with the responsibility of accountability and responsibility to love, protect, and to heal not only myself, but what parts of healing can contribute to the healing of our nations." Just imagine if we had the strength of that responsibility of accountability to past generations. How much attention would we then give to the health of our children, of the future generations? If we can focus on helping our children belong in our congregations and our society, I believe we can create more space for all of us to belong. It might be a louder belonging sometimes, and it would definitely be a little bit more of a chaotic belonging sometimes, but it would be a wider, more encompassing belonging too. A welcome that says, we see you, we know you, we belong to you, and you to us. How are the children? In many ways, they're not okay. They're living in trauma and searching for healing and belonging. Just like you, just like me, just like us all. what can we do for our children? And what can we do for us all? It is good to be on this journey with you, friends. I'm not leaving you with answers, but I'm glad for the accompaniment.
Morning I woke up and I knew what to do. I'd catch all the stones that everyone threw. I'd catch all the sorrow that I could in a day. Then I'd take all the stones and I'd throw them away. Don't ask why, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me. Don't ask why, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me. One morning I woke up and I knew what to do. I'd catch all the stones that everyone threw. I'd catch all the anger that I could in a day. Then I'd take all the stones and I'd throw them away. Don't ask why, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me. Don't ask why, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me. One morning I woke up and I knew what to do. I'd catch all the stones that everyone threw. I'd catch all the injustice that I could in a day. Then I'd take all the stones and I'd throw them away. Don't ask why, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me. Don't ask why, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me.
Our words of closing come from Reverend Robert F. Kaufman. We have come together to share our deepest concerns, speaking and singing words of inspiration and hope. We have committed ourselves to do what we can to ease the burdens of those who suffer, to stand for decency and compassion. We have pledged to work for a more wholesome environment for us and for all the generations that will follow. But these are just words. The hymns we sing are just songs. All our reflections are just idle thoughts. When we convert them into loving and responsible action throughout the week, then and only then will this morning become what we want it to be, a time of worship. And will you now join in our chalice extinguishing words as Celeste extinguishes the chalice? When we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying their power by all of our lives and sharing it with the world. Go in peace, friends. See you next week and online.